All right, guys, and as always, my camera is not lined up where it's supposed to be. I have a real podcaster in the chat today. To be honest, this is interesting for me. I'm almost as excited as you guys are because this was the first fishing podcast that I started listening to, and I finally get to get the co-host of, or are you the host now? I don't know at this point. I mean, you pretty much kicked Alex out for a while. Do you run it now, or is it Alex's deal?
Oh no, I'm 100% the co-host. Alex Swamp Rat Fishing is the he started the podcast. I had to take it over a couple times while he was underway doing his last couple tours in the Coast Guard. So I was in charge then. And when he came back, especially after his 9-month hiatus, and he was able to hop on a few here and there, we had a bunch of new listeners who had no idea who he was.
Yep.
I am the co-host. I did what I needed to do while he was gone, but it is his podcast, and 99% of the work that is done is Alex. I always tell him, I'm the talent, so I show up when I show up, and I'm there to have a good time and to pick on him.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm the co-host. We're both co-hosts, but he's the originator. He's the real host.
Gotcha.
And does all the work. I just show up. I'm the pretty face.
I'm not gonna lie, I missed that part. So I was on another podcast with my buddy, and I was the co-host. And I always I kind of said the same thing. I'm the fat comic relief that comes in, and
That's
he
exactly
was
what I am.
he was very structured. So he was at an hour, he wanted to go, he wanted everything. He had a very detailed. You could tell he had show notes, and he would be he would ask a question. But the problem is I would end up ADD mode. So then I would ask a question over top of his question, and it was just ended up being a weird blend. And this podcast honestly started because I was bored. Because unlike you, I have 4 months of no fishing, and I needed something to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start talking on the internet about fishing because I can't fish. And then honestly, people like Scott from Honor, Michael Bradley, these guys in the chat, they started showing up on a regular basis. And I'm like, wow, these guys like listening to me talk on the internet. So let's just keep it going and see what happens. And
that's pretty much how Alex started Bass and Brews. It was during COVID, and he was bored and started the podcast and rolled on with it with what he did. I was on episode 9 as a guest. And at this time, his podcast was usually 45 minutes. And about 2 hours and 20 minutes later, we were pretty drunk and we ended it. And a couple weeks later, he messaged me, and episode 12 was my first episode as co-host. And
nice.
I've been here on every single episode with the exception of I think 2. I've missed 2. Outside of that, his started the same way. We see a lot of podcasts from the northern states.
Yep.
I feel like it is because of that. You have all this free time in the winter. You can only rig up and get ready for spring so much.
Yep.
There's only so much tackle you can buy before you sit down and say to yourself, I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a lot of the folks come from the north starting the podcast, and it's great. That's how we find a lot of people on new podcasts and new podcasters coming up and keeping things fresh.
It's funny because, like I said, the weird thing that I never anticipated, and I'm sure you guys kind of had the same thing at first, is so it started out and I was just going into Facebook groups, and I'm like, hey, anybody want to come talk fishing? But then it's really an interesting networking tool because I would never have met, I talked to Alex Rudd, I talked to Mikey Balls, I talked to guys that normally I would have no reason to have a 2-hour conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you say, hey, you want to come talk on the internet for 2 hours on YouTube, everybody says yeah. It's amazing who will say yes when you don't expect them to say yes.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not like they're necessarily celebrities, but in the YouTube fishing world, guys like Mikey Balls, Alex Rudd, that they're known. People know who they are. So it's guys who I would never. Had Bailey on at one point. Ben Nowak, all those guys that I watch live streams of. I watch their videos, and then I have them in my podcast with me. And even
that's pretty neat.
Not that Bobby is famous, but Bobby Roast Beef from Jigs and Bigs. I've had him on like 4 or 5 times, and I go fishing with him now. And
Mm-hmm.
that all came from this. It came from me having him on as a guest, jumping on his podcast, and then hanging out with him. And it's just crazy all the weird connections it creates.
That's the same for us. There's so many people that I've got to see because Alex doesn't travel to fish, and I travel once or twice a year to the bigger national tournaments, and so I
Yep.
get to see a lot of people that we've had on the podcast. And the reason that I know them and talk to them and we're buddies is because of the podcast. It does open up a lot of doors to make connections. It's yeah, it's a great little platform. It's a lot more work than people think, and it is a slow grind. Folks talk about how slow building a YouTube channel is. Podcasting is probably just a little bit slower grind than that is. I enjoy it more though than making videos because I hate editing anything. The podcast, I can just sit back and talk and don't have to worry about the camera and don't have to worry about pulling footage. And on our podcast, we don't edit anything. When we
Nope,
hit
I don't either.
record and we hit end to record, whatever is on there is what goes out to the airwaves.
Yep. Yeah, so I started putting stuff out on Spotify originally, and for some reason my Spotify account screwed up and no one could find it. Like you could search it, you couldn't see it, and I kind of gave up on the Spotify thing because I wasn't getting any views. And but what's crazy, like you said, the I like both the YouTube stuff, the editing. I've gotten to the point where like I am, how do I word this? I almost enjoy the editing of my videos as much as the fishing because I get to relive it, and that's kind of how I like almost like reevaluate how I did for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, the cool thing about the podcast is I get to just ramble, and it's interesting to me what people want to hear me say. Like it's funny, like I never thought if people would sit for, like I'll get to the end of the podcast and I'll look at my analytics and I'll be like, oh my god, like 15 people sat for 3.5 hours and listened to me ramble about fishing. And it's a weird like ego boost that people like actually are interested in anything that you have to say for that long, especially in the short attention span world that we currently live in. Like,
You're talking to two dumbasses like me and Alex, and it amazes us that people will sit there and listen to us. I always say it's because we have good guests on. If it was just Alex and I every week sitting there talking, I'm sure we would have negative listeners. There would somehow we would find a way to get negative listeners. We're only as interesting as our guests are, and having good guests on is what brings people to the podcast for us.
so, and you know what's funny is I had a guest host. I've had 3 guest hosts. It's like a weird, like I've given up on having an actual like co-host at all the time. So what I started doing is just bringing people in, and I try to like grab people, that do podcasts or stuff, so it's a little easier. But the first co-host that I had was literally the first guest that I had. So he
Mm-hmm.
came on. He actually ended up becoming my teammate, and he does YouTube, so I do a ton of collaborations with him. But he's 22, he has a life, and he doesn't have time to dedicate 1 day a week to going to do a podcast. And then the next guy that I brought on for a while, PJ, ended up changing jobs, and he's actually changed jobs twice since then and has had to move around a lot, so he wasn't available. And then I got put on as a co-host on another podcast that he ended up deciding to make some changes that I'm not sure I'm supposed to announce. So I'm not going to say why, but he's going a different direction. So then I got essentially fired, which was actually kind of funny. And I'll say if he's watching, because he does jump in, he literally sent me like a formal email saying that he's choosing to go into a different direction. Like that's the difference between the podcasts. It's like I literally got a formal email saying he's choosing to go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just funny to me because I never really took podcasting seriously. It's just like I said in the green room, I treat this like we met at the boat ramp and we're packing up our kayaks and having a conversation before we go home. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I've always treated the podcast because I find that organic conversation more interesting than trying to be like, so here's these 10 talking points and can you answer my question for me? There's a place for that, but I feel like sometimes the more randomness is more interesting for people to watch. But
I'll say this: I wouldn't do Bass and Brews if I had to do it all by myself. It's too much work. Alex and I together, we share getting guests.
yeah,
I say he does a majority of the work he does, but we do have our little
Yeah,
areas that we work and help share and pass along duties. It's it's a lot for one person to do for sure. I love having a co-host. Yeah, plus with him and I have never met. We've been doing this for 3 years now. We've
you
never
still
met
haven't
in
met in
person.
person.
Still haven't
That's
met in
funny.
person, but
That's
we're
awesome.
friends. I send him 12 to 20 TikToks a day, and he'll laugh at one or two of them. And we talk a lot. And he asked me how I'm doing on my tournaments, hoping that I'm doing bad, so he can pick fun at me. But yeah, it's having the co-host is paramount for us. Again, we banter back and forth and give each other shit a lot and all,
Right.
and that's just how we roll. So we having a good time. It's a release for us both. We say it all the time.
Yeah.
Is I'll have days we record on Thursdays, and that's later in the week, long weeks. Thursdays be tired as hell. I'll get home, go, oh my God, I got to do a podcast tonight. And then boom, when we get on here and fire up the
It
camera and
changes.
we get to
Yep.
talking, it fires me up. I'm a people person. I like talking. I'm a social butterfly. So it reinvigorates me. And usually by the end of the podcast, we'll be done at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm wired. I have a hard time going to sleep afterwards.
Yep. No, it's funny that you say that because I have the same deal. Like there is days where see, I didn't used to do it. I did it for the original start of the my pod was going to be just for the winter, just something to do, just an
Hmm.
excuse to put a video a week up when I didn't have content to share. And then I went bi-monthly. I went twice, once every other week, basically, and then sometimes I would skip depending on what was going on. But then I just barely went weekly. But the problem is, if I could find a co-host, like if I could find someone that was willing to show up on a specific day every week, I probably would do it. But I haven't been able to. So I've been
Well,
like,
yeah.
good news. I have a lot of friends that like. I have like Bobby Roast Beef. I have people that I can just bring in that will fill in for that role. And fortunately, it ends up being the kind of a rotating door of like three people that just kind of jump in whenever they're available. But
Well, if you're trying to get a guest co-host on every week along with your guest, now you're having to schedule 2 extra people, and
yeah,
that's a lot of work.
Truckee.
And when Alex was gone for those 9 months, almost every episode, I had a guest co-host on who was a prior guest.
Yeah.
But every week I was having to schedule that, and some days it was
Wow.
Thursday morning where I was getting people scheduled to record.
Yep.
Well, at that point in time, we're recording on Tuesdays, but it would be Tuesday morning, and I'm sitting there getting people scheduled for Tuesday, and then the
Yep.
podcast was supposed to hit at 5 a.m. Friday morning, and Alex would text me at 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock West Coast time. Where's the podcast? I'm like, man, I'm getting it done now. It was a shit show while he was gone for sure. It was 100% just me ADD and all over the place. But
Yep.
I told him when he left, I said my only goal was to put out an episode a week. Don't
Just
hold me to
obviously. Yep.
anything else, an episode a week. And I did that. There were some days where I was recording Thursday night and putting it out Friday morning. So
Yep.
it was a wild time in Bass and Brews. I'm glad he's back. And he's a little short munchkin, but I love him.
How's your tournament season going so far? I haven't really been follow. I will admit I haven't been listening to the podcast recently. Too busy, like you said, juggling this and YouTube. But how have you? I know you do. Do you do just the local trail, or do you do a bunch of trails now?
Yeah, you won't get a lot of tournament update stuff. If I have a tournament we record, I'll talk about it a little bit.
Gotcha.
We're your fishing podcast where we really don't talk a lot about fishing. So
True.
we might touch on a little bit, especially if I had a hard time. Alex likes to dig into me on that. Locally, I've got 2 local trails here, CCKF and CKA
Yep.
in this Raleigh area. I've only fished a couple in CKA, and I think I finished third and sixth.
Okay.
So they got a tournament. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to fish this weekend, but I'm having a decent season in that one. I just can't. My schedule hasn't lined up for 2 years in a row on that in that trail. The other trail, CCKF, I was second in points, but the last 2 tournaments I've had, I have failed to get a limit, and I'm not sure where I have fallen to. I haven't seen the results. I don't even want to look at them, but
Gotcha.
it's been good. It's been good. This year is by far so far been the best year I've had being in the AOI, and I don't know. We got a knucklehead that fishes over here with us, Will Lambert, and he has put up this year alone three bags over 100 inches, maybe four over. Yeah, I think he's put up three or four, and one of them was a little wildcat that we did. But I call him Mr. Century, and he's crushing it last year and this year. So it's probably impossible for me to catch him at this point. I'm not sure where some of the other guys are. But to answer your question, I've had a good season. I'm not going to complain. I've caught some good fish. I've had some tournaments where the last hour I've caught that fifth fish that's
Yeah.
got me up in the money or got me in the top 5 or top 6. And I fished a lot different this year than I have in the past. I used to just all over the place,
Yep.
just hunting for 5 bites. And this year I've really started to learn some of our lakes a lot better the 4 years I've been here. So I've started to have some areas where I know the fish are going to be, and I either just have to wait on them to bite or get them to bite. And sometimes I just have to tie on a Carolina rig or a drop shot and just start working it through. And that's really changed my success in the tournaments that we have. On the big tournaments, the national stuff, if they're at Murray, Norman, Santee, I usually try to get to those. The previous 2 years, I fished Santee twice, and that was it. And then this year, I fished Murray, and for Murray was, I believe, Hobie, and
Yeah, I think that
then
was Hobie. Yeah.
Norman was bass, and I fished those two, and that's it. Once see, I can't travel. I've got my own business. My boss is an asshole. I'm the only employee, and so I can't really get out and travel. When I show up for those tournaments, I'm showing up Friday, and I may have enough time to go fish for an hour. But typically, I show up Friday afternoon and go run around and look at a couple ramps and decide where I'm going to launch Saturday, and
Yep.
just hopefully I can luck into 5 fish. And so far, I haven't been a good enough angler or lucky enough to have to do anything special. But one day
See,
maybe.
that's what's funny is this year. So prior couple years, the first tournament trail I ever, it wasn't even really a trail. It was the Big Bass Challenge, and it was like all the New England states. And basically, you had to catch the 5 biggest fish of your state, and the top two were in the championship. And literally, there was only one other dude in the trail two
Hmm.
weeks before the tournament. So I just entered and caught a fish. Boom, I'm in. Like that's literally how I qualified. I
Yeah.
caught one 17-inch bass and boom, I'm in. And that one was cool because the format was literally the biggest bass. It was not a bag tournament. It was literally the
Mm-hmm.
biggest fish. But it was kind of a road runner. So you had 5 or 6 different lakes in Rhode Island that you could pick from, and you picked which one. Ironically, everybody ended up fishing one of 2 ramps because they had one body of water. It was actually really funny. One body of water was so flooded that you couldn't get to the ramp, and then another body of
Hmm.
water, they forgot to turn the dam off. I don't know whose responsibility it was. The water dropped so much that there was boats that were sitting on shore, like I think they were running water out of it. Like literally, you came around the shoreline and there was jet skis and pontoon boats and stuff just sitting right on the bank because they
Forgot to
dropped the
turn
water
the
that low.
dam off. That seems like a derelict of duty
It's
that
yeah,
should not happen.
I should try to find the photo. Literally, I got there Friday. So the tournament was Saturday. I got there Thursday to pre-fish. Thursday I got there, I could launch my kayak. Come Saturday afternoon, you would have to have dragged your kayak 20 or 30 yards
Hmm.
to get to water, and you couldn't back because it was beyond the ramp,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're into like the muck, so you would have had to literally like drag your kayak 30 or 40 yards to get into 6 inches of water to launch it.
So you Northerners have some tough lakes to fish. We were talking in the green room. You're talking about 2 and 3 hour drives to go
Yeah.
fish. Somebody forgets to turn the dam off or close the dam and can't
Yeah.
launch. That's crazy. We're lucky in this area in North Carolina that we've got Jordan, Sharon, Harrison Falls are our biggest lakes here in the middle of the state. And we're about 2 hours, 2.5 hours from to Norman and some of those lakes over in there. But in this Raleigh area, we're lucky that we have those 3 lakes. They're not huge. That's why bass doesn't come to them because they're not big enough.
Right.
That's why MLF can come fishing because they can put
Spread out.
Falls and Jordan, and then have the championship round on Harris is what they've done the last 2 years. But in addition to that, we also have other municipal lakes that are fairly large. I would call them really big ponds or super small lakes, but we've got a lot of water around here to fish. That just our last tournament for CCKF this past weekend was called the Raleigh Rumble, and it's the 5 municipal lakes in the Raleigh area, and we can get spread out. Even though the lake that I fished is the smallest one, and it had like 10 people on it, so we are literally holding hands. People were catching fish beside each other. That is very rare for us to have that happen. And that lake usually for this tournament only has 2 or 3 people at the most, but it was packed. In general, we don't have to worry about one ramp on a lake and it
Right.
not being accessible. That's crazy to have to deal with that up there. That'd drive me nuts. And not being able to fish 8 months out of the year would drive me nuts too.
The tournament we just did, without giving away too much because that video doesn't hit for probably a month to be honest, but um, it's 200 acres. We
Mm,
have, and it's a kayak team trail, so you have I think three of the guys are in a boat, but the rest is one or two kayaks per team. And not only is it 200 acres, but it fishes for about 200 yards, and the rest of it's useless. So
mm-hmm,
like it was literally to the point where at the end of the tournament, I'll give away a little bit of a secret if you guys want to watch the video. At the end of the tournament, I caught my second fish. So we caught our first fish at like 9 o'clock, and I caught my second fish at
mm.
1. And I went the entire time, and it was 90. It was so, there was so much fog you couldn't see more than a couple feet in front of your face. And by midday, it was so hot that had burned off and turned it into a sauna. And I know I'm talking to Carolina guy about heat, but up here we're not used to it. And at the end of the day, it was like we were arguing when I caught my last fish because I'm like, let's just go fish these docks. And he's like, dude, these docks have already been picked apart. And I'm like, there is nothing that hasn't been picked up. And he's like, well, let's go fish that grass. I'm like, that grass is across the lake. It's gonna take us a half hour to get there. We only have an hour left. And literally as I'm saying that, I set the hook, and then it like changed the whole tournament. But that was one of those tournaments where like you were waiting your turn to fish a dock. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
that close of a, like you would come around a corner and there's a dude flipping the grass, and then you go around the other corner and there's like there was no, you were merry-go-rounding. It was
Mm-hmm.
not a, and the way this place, it's like your standard northern lake, so it's a bowl. So like
Yeah.
the middle's 40 feet deep, and I'm not a deep water fisherman, so that's off limits to me. I'm not even screwing with that. So basically, I'm running around the shoreline trying to fish. You're basically trying to clean up after the guy in front of you and hoping that you're throwing something
Man,
different than he was.
you got to start working on that offshore game, man. It'll open up so much more water for you. That's going back to I started kayak fishing in 2021, and I was running the banks for the most part. Tried to do some offshore fishing, but it wasn't. I didn't have a good graph and all this and that, and
Right.
so about 3/4 of the way through that tournament or that season, I got a better graph and started working on my offshore game. And I'll be honest with you, that's the reason I've had better success the last 2 years. Was I was able to get offshore and get to some areas that a lot of other people weren't fishing,
Yep.
and that I was able to sneak out some fish that I wouldn't have the years prior. And we still in the kayak world, we still have a lot of guys that beat the bank, and our lakes here, you in the morning time, you can have some good success in the morning, especially if you can get on some
Yep.
schoolies. But
That
with
sun
the way
gets
the
up.
yeah, it's tough. You can if and we don't have docks. Our 3 big lakes here don't have docks. No docks.
Okay, got you.
So you can treat laydowns like a dock and fish those, but in a kayak, you can't run them like you can in a boat.
No, no.
And the offshore game is really what is what you have to do in the summertime here to be competitive, unless you just get on them first thing in the morning. I usually don't, but some folks will. But man, you got to start trying to work into some of that offshore game. It doesn't have
It
to be deep. It just
right.
needs to be off and get you a good graph and start reading it. It'll change. It'll open up a lot of water for you because there's fish out there in them.
It's funny you say that because I'm literally I was messaging a guy that I have a buddy that does a lot of like the KBF monthly stuff and like a
Mm,
lot of the monthly online stuff, and he puts up, you know, he actually was giving me some tips about that tournament lake, and he was showing me and giving me some ideas. And So that tournament, just to give you a perspective of how rough it was, there was 3 teams that got 1 fish,
Mm, it's
and
a
we
rough
got
day.
we got a limit and won by like 17 or 18 inches, and it was
Mm,
just barely a limit. Like it really wasn't that great. But um, the thing is I actually literally was messaging a guy today that I'm driving 3 hours on Friday to go fish a lake because it's a smallie lake, and it's one of those like 40 feet bowls in the
mm-hmm.
middle, and there's a good chance there's not going to be fish on the edge, and he's literally like going to help me, like he's going to go through the deep fishing with me and show me what to do because I can do it. The problem is I almost need someone to force me to do it so then I get that
Mm-hmm.
confidence, because my problem with it is I like to power fish more, and this year it's funny because I like to power fish more, and I've caught probably 95% of my fish on the wacky rig because I can't get them to bite the power stuff right now. But I am, I'm getting the deep cranks and the drop shots and all the crap. I'm tying it all on and going on Friday to kind of do deep fishing school, and he's going to show me some of the stuff that he does and baits that he uses, and he
That
fishes all the same lakes I do. So
that's exactly what I did. Is I just started connecting with folks that were fishing offshore, and
yeah,
they were nice enough to take me out and kind of show me what they were doing. The majority of the offshore fishing I do this time of year is going to be power fishing. It's going to be throwing deep cranks. It's going to be
yep,
throwing wobble heads, some jigs. I mean, big spoons.
yep,
I consider that power fishing. And then obviously, if and we're hunting for a lot of schoolies on that too. But if I got to switch up to a drop shot or a shaky head or a Carolina rig, I'll do that as well. But it's there's not a big blow up on a top water is awesome, but when you're reeling a crankbait in 12, 15, 18 foot of water and you're reeling it and it just stops, and for a second or two, you until you feel that first head shake, then it gets exciting because that fish is coming up from some deep water and you have you don't know what it is sometimes until it's jumping and you see your crankbait flying around in its mouth. And
yeah.
there's that shit gets me excited. There is when you're reeling that crankbait or you're throwing a big spoon and you got to lift it up and it feels like a log on the end of it. Hell yeah,
Yeah.
that right there will get your blood boiling.
That's honestly why I started doing tournaments. So the tournament scene, and it kind of goes with what you were saying, is everybody's a hero on their home lake. At the end of the day, if you fish it consistently, you could probably go get on some fish. But I wanted to measure myself against other people at lakes that I'm not familiar with. And that's the one thing that I learned in Massachusetts last year, and it's the thing I'm learning this year, and it's plaguing me, is that if there's not a shallow bite, and like you said, it's regional, but it's not regional. Up here, it's the same deal. From
Hmm.
about our tournaments are 7 to 2. By about 9:30, if you haven't gotten your fish off of your laydowns and your docks and your pads, unless you're punching deep in the back of the pads, or like you said, throwing a frog over top of them where they can hide in the backs of the pads, they've pulled off of that shit. So then you may or may not get a rogue fish that happens to be coming in there to eat a bluegill, but you're not going to be consistently. And then for me, it's always like I want to get 5 fish as quickly as I can in the morning and then go head hunting the rest of
Hmm.
the tournament. And that deep water stuff is where you can go do that, because like you said, the other thing is if it's eating like a 6XD, it's probably bigger than 12 inches, because yeah, the 12 inches will eat them, but there's also a good chance that it's
Yeah.
bigger than the 12-inch fish too, because it's eating a bait that's almost as big as itself. So unfortunately up here we also have pike, so it could also be a freaking pike, and then that's probably the most exciting and frustrating thing in the world, is fighting a fish that you think is a 5 pounder because you pulled it up from deep and can't see it, and then you get it up to the surface and you're like,
Yeah.
this is
I call those down here jackfish, and they're
good.
pickerel. And we don't have a lot of them in our waters. You'll snag one every now and again. But we do have big catfish that will eat crankbaits and
Catfish,
drop shots. And I'll tell you, on a drop shot, for me, I catch a big bass. And used to, I just, oh shit, it's another damn catfish. I'm over here farting around, just trying to
yep,
get it up without breaking anything or without doing something stupid. And it comes up and I see it. I'm like, yo, shit, that's a bass. I'm trying to get the net. And then it starts
yep,
wanting to run when it gets to the surface. So we do have big catfish that bite our bass lures. And usually if you're fishing with a crankbait or something on a heavy rod, they start to roll a lot more, and it's just lifting dead
You can
weight.
start to tell, yeah.
But on a drop shot, man, I've learned every hook set on a drop shot down here, you treat it like a bass until it gets to the boat, and then
Yep.
you have to deal with it after that. But it's we get some we get get a little excited sometimes for a 10, 12 pound catfish. Matter of fact, I can't remember who it was. It was month ago, 2 months ago, somebody caught like a 40-pound catfish. I mean,
Wow.
it's yeah, it can be exciting until it's not.
Yeah, it's funny because the my teammate, so I fish. I mean, he does YouTube, so we do a lot of like collaborations. He's actually from Canada, and he comes down to Vermont and fishes with me a
Mm,
lot. And so, like when we do get to meet up, it's an all day video
yeah.
recording collaboration. And he's the entire opposite of me when it comes to fishing. I've been fishing since I was, there's literally photos of me in my dad's 17-foot aluminum Sylvan in my car seat strapped down in the front so he can,
Nice.
you know what I mean? Like I've been fishing my whole life. So, I learned how to tie a Polymer knot before I knew how to tie my shoes. Like that's just, how I grew up. So I don't necessarily get like jacked up about a 14, 12-inch bass. He would freak out if he caught a 7-inch perch.
Mm-hmm.
If he's catching an 8-inch bluegill, he was pumped. And he started to go the other way now where he's getting pissed off when he catches like pickerel or pike in a tournament, things like that. But what's funny is when you do a tournament, it's a whole different level. Like even a 14-inch bass, if you haven't got one on the board yet, that first fish, the feeling of at least getting one on the board makes even the smallest fish feel like a 5 pounder. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
that elephant comes off, and you're just like, okay, I got one. So because I blanked, and like the first tournament I ever did, that one in Rhode Island, I ended up a third with one fish and caught it
Damn.
like within the last hour of the tournament. Like it was literally I Hail Married a lipless that a color I didn't even like. I just started literally going through the box and pulling the emergency colors out, and
Junk
the
fishing.
fit and literally didn't even get to reel it. The fish ate it off the top like a frog.
Nice.
Like it hit the water and it must have been just cruising and smashed it. The second tournament I placed fourth. So I went in to my first tournament trail with basically a top 5 record, right? And then the
Mm-hmm.
first tournament I fished with them, I placed fourth, but like an inch out of the money. So now I've done 3 tournaments, again, all top 5, then blank twice in a row. And I threw a fucking tantrum when I left the ramp after the second blank. Like I literally just texted the group and I was like, guys, I'm not even going to go to the weigh-in. I'm going home. It's a 3-hour drive and I'm not going to be pleasant enough to be around any of you. It's better for everyone if I just go home. And what actually saved my tournament career was that group of guys, every single one of them individually texted me and encouraged me to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I placed in the money in the next tournament. And that's the thing about tournaments is it's gambling. Let's be honest. It's freaking gambling. It's you don't anybody could catch a bunch of fish and end up with winning bag. But it's you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if the next fish is a 20-incher or an 11 and a half and doesn't count. You just don't know until you get it in the boat. And that's the cool thing about it is you have to learn and you have to grow if you want to stay competitive because eventually those guys that you're competing against learn your tendencies and they also, let's be honest, can look at your kayak when they're launching and go, oh, he's running Senkos, maybe I'll try Senkos today. Like information gets shared, they find out more, and guys get competitive and they don't want to be beat again, so then they start getting better and then everybody grows. And that's what I like about it is
Oh yeah,
everybody gets better.
I've said it a ton on our podcast. I don't do a lot of fun fishing. It really doesn't excite me if I'm going out fishing on a non-tournament day. I may be going to practice on a lake or I'm going somewhere and trying something new or I'm preparing to go fish
Right.
in a local tournament. And it fulfills a competitive edge for me, as you said earlier. I love it. That's the reason I got into kayak fishing. I wanted when I moved back up here, I was trying to join a bass boat club, one of the local clubs around here, but they didn't take a lot of the good ones didn't take
Full
9
English, yeah.
boaters, and I didn't know anybody fishing the couple team trails we got. I had met somebody with a kayak, at Sharon Harris one day because I had a kayak. I lived on Savannah River, so I had a little piddly kayak that I fiddle fart around in. I was just out. I would go out there and paddle around and throw a beetle spin and some stuff and just catch whatever farting around. And I saw he showed up with a PA-12 rigged out with a motor, and I was like,
Yep.
huh. And he told me about the clubs, and I was like, huh. So I started doing some digging and talking to him and met some other folks and ended up getting the hobby that I'm in now and started kayak fishing. I love it. It's it is it's fun for me. It fulfills a little competitive edge, and then I've met some unbelievably great people that now these are I've met so many folks now that I can just call up or they'll call me up and we'll just talk fishing and 2 hours
Yep.
will go by and we're just
Yep.
talking fishing. So I love that aspect of it, the camaraderie.
The and I don't want to disparage it, but I've noticed like the kayak world is like that, and the bass boat world doesn't appear to be either. Like every kayak trail I've been a part of or been affiliated with, and like you said, the other thing is the competitive nature. Like I tell everybody that I compete against. Like I'm that guy that's like talking it up, joking, laughing with everybody at the captain's meeting up until launch. From 7 to 2, you're all dead to me. And I tell them that. I'm like, guys, I like you. You're my friends. But from 7 to 2, you're dead to me. And then at 2 o'clock, we can be friends again. But until that, it's just my competitive nature. And it comes from, I played sports in high school. I played beer gut softball, for years. And it was just like, I always needed some sort of competition in my life. It was like my one, like, release, I guess. So tournament fishing kind of became that filler. Like you said, it's like it's a way to measure yourself, but it's also just that thrill of like every fish catch could put you closer to the money. What's crazy
Mm-hmm.
about ours is more of a paper style, so we don't use tourney eggs. It's all old school photos
Mm-hmm.
in an album and hand your phone over to the director at the. I mean, I guess it's not
Wow.
old school because that's not how CPR really ever worked, but that's how we do it. Is we literally
Mm-hmm.
hand our phones to the director, and then he takes the fish and writes down the numbers
Right.
on the board. So we don't know. We have no. It's like a close scoring
Mm-hmm.
turn off, but we literally don't know until everybody hands in their phone, which is good and bad. For me, I always refuse to look at like the tourney X board until I got a limit. If I didn't have 5 fish, I didn't even bother looking because I just assume everybody else has a limit when I could look at the score. Now I don't know. And I've been wrong every time. Like I've looked and been like, oh, these guys definitely have a huge bag. Then you get back and they got 1 fish or 2 fish or like a couple 12s and that's it. But and then other like the tournament I just did, I could have sworn every single guy I competed against was giving me a line of bullshit because every time they would pass, you would hear him go, "Oh, it's tough. I only got 2." And I'm like, "You're full of shit. You have 5. You're sandbagging. You don't want me to know you have 5 because you want me to let up." But then I got to the ramp and they had 2. Like it was crazy. And in my mind, I'm always like behind. That's just how I fish. I fish right till the tournament's till 2 o'clock. My last cast is at 1:58.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like I literally my last like 3 casts, my measuring board's already at my feet because I need to make sure I get it just in case I happen to get that one go and I can drop it on the board, make it in time.
Yeah, usually
But
my last cast is with 5 minutes to go because if I catch a damn fish with 1 minute to go and I get it in
it's gonna
and
piss you
can't
off.
can't
Yeah, I've
get
thought
I'm
about
just
that.
I'm gonna be even more pissed regardless of where I finish that I
The
couldn't
pull and the
score that
catch board are
fish.
gonna end
So
up
the
in the
hell with
lake.
that. The hell with that. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects to being able to see the leaderboard and changing up what you're doing. If you've got 4 fish and you need just one, kind of knowing, well, shit, I only need a 12 incher to
Yeah,
make some noise, then you go fish a little bit differently. And then there's something also exciting to not know until you show up to weigh in too.
yeah,
It gives you a little bit of anxiety and which isn't good, but there's some excitement to it
yep.
to not know what's going to happen until they start calling names off.
It's what I noticed it did to me being able to see the score was it affected how I fish because if that guy won't by me and then I saw he was ahead of me, I assume he's on to something. So then I would try to replicate, is he fishing shallow? Maybe I should try shallow. Maybe he's fishing pads. So like it would get in my head, like I saw that guy on pads and he's ahead of me. So maybe they're in pads. So then it would change my technique, or I would get off of my own game trying to replicate what the guy that's beating me was doing, which is why I stopped looking. Because then I would mentally like lock into, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
saw him flipping docks, so maybe I should flip docks too because it's clearly working for him. And I've learned from enough repetition now that it does not matter what the guy in front of you is doing, because I can tell you that the tournament we just did, we were 10 yards behind a guy. I watched him flip pads for 20 minutes and he left. We came in behind him and pulled a 19 and 3/4 out of him.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, like, just because someone fished it doesn't mean there's no fish there. It's just you didn't hit the spot in the spot in the spot with the right color at the right time. And sometimes it almost helps because sometimes they piss the bass off, and then the bass is just real ornery when you get there, and then all of a sudden you drop a Senko in its face, and it's just so angry that somebody's been throwing a Ned rig at it for 20 minutes that it lashes out and hits your Senko instead. So it's like there's no like, in my mind, there's no reason not to follow behind somebody or compete against other people. But at the same time, like in my mind, I'm always like, if you watch any tournament video on my YouTube channel versus any fun fishing video, you'll notice one thing. Like my teammate wears a hat cam. I can't wear a hat cam because I would give someone an epileptic seizure. Because I'm not even, I'll at times not even have the fish back to the kayak and I'm already looking for the next cast. Like I'm already looking for, okay, what's the next tree I'm going to cast to? What's the next, where am I heading next? Where, like my brain is already processing. I'm doing the whole chess thing where I'm
Mm-hmm.
already 3 moves ahead. But then if I look at the scoreboard, that resets that whole process. And for me, I'm more of a instinctual fisherman. My fish finder is really for depth. I do use it to mark fish, and I will say if I see a pattern of like the fish always seem to be in 5-10 feet of water or something like that, then I'll definitely take that into account and adjust baits for where they're at. But for the most part, it's basically telling me water temp and depth. And then if there's rocks, or like if I see something significant, like a huge rock pile or a big pile of grass, in the middle of something, I'll do it. But other than that, I'm just like, okay, that weird stick right there, I need to cast to that, or this area I need to run a crankbait through. It's just all like how I fish. And if I try to not do that, I end up blanking. And that's
Yeah, I
what
don't.
happened with the 2 tournaments I blanked. I just tried to
Yeah, I
copy
don't want to
everybody
be
else.
following people behind on the damn shore. I want to go turn the side imaging. I don't have forward facing sonar. I want to go out
Yeah.
there and turn my side imaging on and look for. Obviously I'm looking for brush piles and rock piles and
Right.
stuff like that, but I'm also looking for some schooled up fish that I can go sit on and pluck two or three out of, or four or five,
Apart.
or how many ever it may be. And a lot of times I'm the only one out there,
Yep.
and that's a timing thing. So if you can find some good areas, or if you're in a lake that you know real well and you know fish should be there, you just kind of cycle through two or three of those places, and at some point in the day they're going to be there, and at some point in
Yep.
the day they're going to bite. And so cycling through that, I don't, I do not want to be up on the bank chasing behind people. And the worst thing to
Yep.
me is watching some asshole catch a fish right behind you after you just went
Yep.
through there, like you said.
Yep.
And yeah, that drives me nuts. I just feel more comfortable out there on my own little spot, being able to figure them out there. And usually there's not anybody else out there, so I don't have to worry about
Yep.
that. I can go
See, I
out
have
there and I can not catch those fish and not have to worry about watching somebody come behind me and catch them.
the problem I have is it's a losing and winning strategy. So I run and gun. When I'm fishing, about like the tournament I'm fishing Saturday. Oh, for those of you who weren't in mainstreams fishing, I'm fishing a tournament on Saturday, guys, solo. I did a poll on my buddy's live stream. I like basically took over his live stream, and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm doing a poll. Everybody vote if I should do it or not. But my buddy likes to fish, so he was predominantly a bank fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
He fishes. He lives in Montreal, so there's no like big water that he could get to. So he didn't have a kayak until a year and a half ago. So he is the guy that will pick the shit out of a spot because he only has so many spots to
That's
fish.
right.
And he's that guy that like it I call it his magic. But I will go through an area and fish the shit out of it, and then he'll be so close to the bank. I swear to God, he's got 1 foot straddle on the bank while he's casting into a puddle on the shore, and he'll pull an 18 or 19 or 16 or 17 out of water that I don't even know how you couldn't see the dorsal fin of this fish because he's so dirt shallow. But then like the problem is then when that bite's not there, I typically, because the way Slay Nation works with the team trails, you have to be no more than like 20 to 30 yards apart. So I will go 30 yards deep and cast deep and work like a reaction style fan cast while he's picking apart the tree or rock. Or I actually pretty much don't face him because it irritates me because I don't know what he's doing, but he manages to make it work. So he's actually made me slow down, which is what you were saying earlier. Is that's what I did learn is there was tournaments where I would do 2 or 3 laps around a small pond before I caught a fish because I just kept moving. And I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. And I've realized that you got to hit that spot within the spot sometimes to get that fish. But then also when that bite isn't there, it's hard for me to pull him out of that because that he's very like that's his game. So then I have to pull him out of that and go deep, and it's hard for me to get him to fish because he fishes like Ned Wacky. You know, he's not. He might drop shot, but he doesn't have much of a reaction repertoire yet because he never had the option to. Because you're not throwing a 6XD from the bank. It's not something that you're going to do. Like you're going to be digging it out of rocks all weekend.
You'll be losing a
So
shitload of money.
you're going to be spending a shit ton of money. You're not throwing even like a chatterbait. Like if you're fishing, he's fishing like drainage canals in Montreal. You're not throwing. You're going to lose a jacket. You're going to spend $20 every time you go fishing. So I'm learning shallow, and I'm trying to help him, expand his deep game. But I do need to like get the deep because my idea of deep cranking was I would take a lipless and go out and deep, and I would just let it fall, basically count it down and slow roll it back. But then I could kind of fish at multiple depths. But I need to learn the actual ins and outs of locating fish and doing the deep thing because, like you said, the one advantage is unless we have 2 guys with forward facing sonar, but other than that, and one guy just got it, so he isn't really super fluent with it. Unless those guys have that, like you said, it's a merry-go-round on the bank. So if you can find those ones out deep here by yourself, you have those 18s and 20s to yourself instead of you get the 118 in the school and the other 3 guys get the other 18s. You get 4 because you're the only one out there in that school. So
that's the interesting thing about team tournaments. And I fish a couple team tournaments with a buddy of mine on the bass boat side, and him and I fish well together because he has his things that he likes to do, and I have my things that I like to do. But if one of us are catching fish, if we get into it and we finally, we get a pattern or something, and one of us is catching fish on what we're doing, we both can adjust to what the other person is doing. We might not be as efficient at it, but we can then start to increase the odds that we're getting bites. That's the thing. You got to have that tournament, that team partner or that partner side of it is really good if both of you are good at different things. But then once somebody gets something dialed in, you need to be okay enough with what you're doing. And sometimes in a kayak, I carry, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 12 rods. Sometimes you got to take one of those rods, those combos that you use for, flipping, and tie on something else on there to make it work. I don't know, a crankbait on a flipping rod because that's all you got. You got to be able to tie that on there, and maybe he catches one fish, the kicker fish or something like that. But being able to have a partner that can come in and do what you're good at, or vice versa, that's important to do. And usually it works that way where you've got an offshore guy, which offshore isn't always deep. It's just not throwing at the bank. And then, being able to switch that stuff up, it really increases your odds of getting more bites, and more bites are going to lead to more fish that you can score. And who knows, maybe one of them's that 22 incher.
That's the thing that honestly I had to reconcile because, like I said, I did tournament solo for a while, and then my clock is way faster than his. So I'm like, okay, yeah, there's nothing here, move on. Nothing here, move on. Nothing here, move on. And he slowed me down, and I've had to reconcile the fact that, and I've come to we've done 4 now together, and every single tournament, every one of them, the last hour, I'm aggravated because I want to go deep or I want to go do a crankbait or chatterbait to try to get that bigger bite. And he's like, no, I got to fish this tree. And I'm always, every single time, I'm like, okay, because I have to let him do it, because every time he comes out with that last hour fish that
Mm-hmm.
pushed us over the edge, or he got us our limit, and then I come in behind him and get the next one, and that's the one. It's always like literally every tournament has been the last 2 hours or hour and a half. This last one we just did, like the last two fish that we caught were within the last hour, and it was like one, boom, I caught mine. We went to the area he wanted to go, boom, he caught his, and that made the difference. So it's like you said, it's and the other good thing about it is and that's one thing I learned actually fishing with Bobby was he actually opened my eyes to fishing with a partner more, because he was like, "What are you fishing?" And I'm like, probably a paddle tail and a swim jig." He's like, "Okay, I'll throw a spinner bait and a chatterbait." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because then we know that a paddle tail, a chatterbait, a spinner bait, and a swim jig, we know which one's working, and then we can dial in the color, and then we can." And that's what I learned is like, if you got a teammate that's doing one technique and you do another technique, and then you figure out what's working or what color's working, you can narrow that pattern down a lot faster. If you're both fishing a Senko and you're both not catching on a Senko, neither one of you are getting any damn
Mm-hmm.
fish. So if you have that teammate that's doing the opposite technique, you can narrow that pattern down twice as fast as you would have by yourself.
If I got to fish a kayak team tournament and I can only be 20 feet, 20 yards from my partner,
It's
I
rough.
that
It's hard.
that shit would drive me bonkers.
It's
Ain't no
hard.
way in hell my impatient ass could do that. I'm not gonna go over there and fart around over here for 30 minutes while you go fish a tree. That will
Yep.
drive me. I'll quit and go home before I do that. I can't.
Dude.
I have not the patience for that kind of fishing. Like I'm not. I mean, offshore, maybe if we're offshore
Yep.
and we can see them, we know there's fish down there. But if we're just over here on the bank pitching at docks and shit, this isn't a good thing because I've got my ass beat a couple times from people fishing like that. But for me, if I have to get, I do not want to sit there and look at a dock for 30 minutes. I'm not. That ain't who Paul is.
I
I'm
will tell
not
you,
doing
it's
that shit. It will drive me nuts. I'll be throwing stuff at them. Like I can't do that. I ain't too crazy about fishing a tournament where I can only be. We've had some. I've done some team kayak fishing, but it was us together putting our
right.
fish, and we didn't have to be close together. We don't have team tournaments on our local trails. But if that kind of fishing, bless y'all for that, because there ain't no way my ass could do it. I'd hate you at the end of the day, and I'd never want to do it again.
Dude, it took a lot of, so, and he's probably watching this too, and he's gonna see it and probably get some information that he didn't know. I get irritated some days. I really do. But what's really weird though is after I've accepted that though, because when me and him do collaborations too, the other thing is because of the YouTube stuff, we're usually close together anyways because we're trying to get the shot. It's more about the camera angle, because I have a back cam and a front cam. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, if he catches a fish, I'll kick my kayak around and try to get a shot of him catching that fish, just be able to send to him so he can put it in his video. So we got to the point where we actually had a guy bring a drone to one of our tournaments, and he was following us around with a drone and filming us, which was really cool. And what was really interesting, which I learned and I never realized until I watched the rest of the footage, is me and him would be going down a bank and like literally synchronized without look. I'm deep, he's shallow, and we're like literally maneuvering to stay the same distance from each other without communicating or talking. We got to the point where we're in that like almost symbiotic deal. But like you said, the thing that sucks is if we're in like a body of water that he's fishing 6 inches of water, the max depth I'm going to get is 8 feet in a 30-yard stretch. It's just not going to be, unless it's a sheer cliff, there's not deep enough water. So then I'm limited on what baits I can throw. And then I throw a fan cast, and now I'm waiting for him to finish fishing his tree, and I'm like, we got to go to this next dock. We got to go to this next area. I want to go to this grass flat. And he's like, no, 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 wait, there's a rock. And like you said, the first couple of tournaments, dude, the first tournament, I can't say anything because the first tournament was my home lake, and I already had a game plan, and it was it's one of those places that has a lot of resident fish, so we could just
Mm.
fish it. The second tournament, it was a struggle because I was like, dude, we need to move. We need to go get more fish. We can't because in my mind, like, it's a time thing. Like if I haven't got a fish in 3-4 casts, I'm moving. it may not be 100 yards, it may be 20 feet, but I'm moving, and then I'm getting to the next spot, and then I'm picking that apart. And then, like you, I'm more of a, I'm gonna fan cast, may pick a different bait and fan cast, I'm gone, and then I'm going to the next spot. Whereas he's like literally, I've got to hit the right side, the left side. He's that guy that at a dock, he's gonna try to hit every post to see if they're on the third post back or the second post back. You know what I mean? Like, he's that guy. But I have to trust the process, because every tournament we fished together, he's pulled a fish doing that. So I can't,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen every time, but there's always one moment where I'm aggravated because he has to go fish this stick that he saw in the water. It looks like something that I couldn't even put my toes in and get wet, but somehow he pulls a freaking 18-incher out of there. And then he always gives me that smug ass look because he knows I'm pissed off that he's sitting there in 6 inches of water. And he always looks back at me like, I told you. And I'm like, ah.
Look at here, Hoss. I have people that say, "Hey, man, I want to go fishing with you," and I tell them, I say, "Look, we'll go fishing, but I'm not fun to fish with. I'm
Yeah,
self-deprecating. I'm impatient. I'm 99% of the time I'm going to be out there in my graph, scanning around, looking for stuff on points. And if I
yeah,
don't like it, I'm going to go, you know, a 20-minute pedal down over to this next point and do a lot of that. And some folks, they've done it, but I just I'm not a fun person to fish with. And it's
yeah,
because I'm always moving and looking.
yep,
Now, if we get on a spot that has fish on it, or it should have fish on it, then maybe, yeah, I'll sit down and I'll work it. And not have, that's the great thing about forward facing sonar is you
they're there. Yeah,
waste so much less time because you can see if there's something following your lure, and the folks that are good at it that I know can say, oh, that's bass or that's perch
yeah,
or whatever. So you waste a lot less time. I have down imaging and side imaging. I'm decent at reading that stuff, but sometimes you're not going to see fish on those, and there's a rock pile, there's a brush pile or something there, and you have to fish it just to keep them honest. And sometimes they're there. You didn't see them, but they're there. And I just do a lot of moving. I've had tournaments where our TD was like, you know, I can't remember what it was on Sharon Harris last year. I think it was a summer tournament. It was June, maybe, I don't know, somewhere around there in the summertime. And I know where I want to fish when I go to that lake. And I launched and made like a 45-minute ride, caught a couple fish, went way up another creek, caught a couple fish, came back out here, caught another fish here. Like, I caught about 10 fish, but they were all over the lake. And so it was
yep,
just all over. And that's just how I fish, unless I know I need to sit. Our tournament 2 weeks ago, I fished a place in the morning that was where I wanted to start. I'd fished it Friday morning. I caught 2 fish, had 36 inches in five minutes. I left. I went there that morning, jumped off. The only bite I got was there for an hour, 15 minutes. And so I ran to the first spot that I wanted to fish after the sun came up. And I caught a couple, and then I sat there all day, and I squeaked out 5 fish, and my last fish was 13 minutes to go. And as I was reeling that fish in, the damn game warden was under the bridge with his binoculars looking, and they start motoring over here. I'm like, oh Lord, please don't fuck with me right now. Let me get this
yeah,
fish. And they get up and, how's it going? Good, good. I got the fish in the net. It's like, I'm fishing a little tournament. I gotta get this one submitted here in about 5 minutes. And they didn't say anything. I had
yep,
my number. I was good. They had anything. They were looking for people drinking and farting around. So, but yeah, it was. I mean, I'll do what I need to do now, but when it comes down to fishing with somebody in a kayak, I'm not the guy you really want to go out there and fish with.
yep,
We'll have a white claw at the ramp at the end of the day before we leave, and we'll launch together. But I mean, you might you might not see me. I've got a buddy of mine I fish with a good bit. We fish the same. That's what we do.
yep,
But I still we'll split off and be gone from each other for the majority of the day, and then if we get on them, we'll call them and be like, "Hey, man, they're over here on this point," and we'll meet up,
yep.
and then we'll wear their ass out there.
See, I got used to it only because of the YouTube. If I didn't do the YouTube stuff, it would be different. So, like, when I do collaborations with people, I'm trying to film them because a lot
Hmm.
of times, if I'm like Bob,
That makes sense. I'm not doing any of that shit. I quit
yeah,
filming halfway through last year. I put the camera on the boat this year once, and it was the biggest pain in the ass that I remembered.
Yep.
And I haven't put it back on there. I've done some lives when I'm just out practicing. I've done some TikTok lives on Bass and Brews. Matter of fact, 3 weeks ago I threw a $400 combo in the lake, just slipped right out of my hand on live. That
Oh,
was interesting. But after the tournament I went and scooped it up. I was able to find it on my own. But the YouTube stuff, y'all can have that. You can have the editing, you can have setting a camera up. I mean, I don't have a trailer and I put a lot of crap in my boat, and I've got an old front mounted trolling motor that's heavy as shit, but it's got spot lock on it. And somebody
yeah.
gave it to me. It's the only reason I have it. Then I got to put that on there. I got the battery box. I got to unload all the stuff to put the stupid Hobie wheels on. I don't unload my kayak with unload the heavy stuff, but I use the bungee cord method. So I got to put bungee cords all through holes and lift it up. It's just a pain
A lot of shit to
to
do.
do all that. And the one thing I do not need to fish is a stupid camera. So I leave that shit at home and have been. Matter of fact, that reminds me, I got to cancel my damn GoPro subscription tonight when we get off of here, so I don't get charged $50 or $40 or whatever the
Oh
hell it
yeah.
is for nothing that I'm not going to use anymore. Yeah, the I can see where when you're trying to create content with somebody else, that forces you to have to be there. Like you said, being able to video them catching a fish from your point of view
Yep.
is that's more content that you can put into that one fish catch. And so that makes a fish catch more interesting. I mean, fishing's
Yep.
boring as hell. I mean, we'd be honest.
Yep.
It's boring as hell when we're out there on the water for usually 3/4 of the time. I
Yep.
mean, some days, even when you go out there and absolutely wreck them, it's what is it, 2 or 3 hours at the most? I mean, some
Yep.
days, no, some days you go out there all day, but that's few far in between. But to go out there and to be able to get numerous shots, if you got a front and back and a selfie camera, you got 3 shots. And if you got your buddy over there filming you reeling in a fish, that's a whole nother piece of content you can add in on that. And it gives that viewer a different perspective. It feels like they're with you catching the fish. And then when you're filming, your buddy's filming you from the side. Now they're getting that viewer, that TV viewer
Yep.
view of catching it. And so you get them into your content and they feel like they're with you in the boat, and then they also feel like they're watching you from the bank or
Yep.
from another boat.
So I posted a short yesterday, and it was my buddy from Canada, and then literally the short was not all Canadians are polite, because he literally, so he had we were fun fishing, and he had a 5 pounder, like, and
Mm.
the thing is, this fish was so close to me, you see it in the short, I reach for my net, I'm that close to the bass that I almost could have netted this thing for him, and he had it on a wacky rig, and he got it like 6 feet from his kayak, and it spit the wacky rig, and you see
Mm.
it all in the video, and he literally goes from, oh my god, this is a PB, this is a big fish, to fucking cocksucker, fucking sucker, fucking, and I got it all on video. And I was like,
Look,
it's the stuff like that, to be honest. The funniest part about YouTube is some of the best watched and most popular videos are not me catching a 5 pounder, a 22-inch. It's me birds nesting a reel. It's the video where I almost caught a freaking loon. Like, you probably did, yeah. So, dude, I literally casted a lipless, empty water, right? Casted a lipless. It hits the water. 2 blackheads pop out of the water,
mm.
and they go back down. And I know I've dealt with him enough that he's going for that bait. So I'm burning this lipless for all I got, because I know, and loons here are an endangered species, and
Mm.
you will get fined if you're caught hooking them. So I'm literally burning this thing, and the whole time I'm like, no loon, leave it alone. Like, I'm yelling at this bird. I pull it out of the water. What you can't see on the camera is that thing was fucking hot on the tail of that lipless all the way back to my kayak. Those are the videos, and that's why I've gotten to the point where I have an almost 300 gig card. I have 2 cameras. I run it off a lithium battery. I start it and I stop it when I catch a fish so I can edit it
Mm-hmm.
faster. But I record everything, because I've got everything from the loon. I've had beavers jump off a bank and start slapping their tail at me. Like that's the stuff that and that's where I get the enjoyment from the YouTube, because I can make that video, and like my wife will like hear me and she'll come up and check on me because I'll be laughing hysterically at something I didn't even realize happened. Like
Mm-hmm.
I actually lost a rod and found it because of YouTube.
Mm.
I literally knocked a rod off my horizontal rod holder, but because I had it on video and I had two angles, I could kind of triangulate where it was. And then at the next tournament, I looked for it, couldn't find it because it was windy that day. But I went back at the tournament and I fished that same area and I found it because I could triangulate where it was, and I knew where I lost it because I watched it fall off my rod holder on the video.
You folks that use those side mounted rod holders got bigger balls than I do. Ain't no way in hell I would ever use those. I would be knocking stuff off the whole time, or I mean, I don't even like where I have my graph set up. It's easy to see. It's just there's no way I could trust myself to not throw that shit in the water. Ain't no way.
What I learned is there's a hole for the bungee on the Yak Gadget one. You need that bungee. So it has, like, the tarp tie down bungees with the
Yep.
ball on them.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually tie that through. There's a loop and then there's
Mm-hmm.
a hook on the other side. If you do that, it's okay. If you don't, like I said, I literally, and the worst part was when I lost that rod, I hit it with my net for a 12-inch bass. Like I hit it with my
Yeah,
net,
no.
and you see it. You see my rod go boop, boop, gone.
Yeah, my shit's in the Hobie crate behind me, sticking up behind me.
Yeah,
That's yeah, I had to adjust how I casted, which is fine. It's actually made me a better caster.
yeah,
But there ain't no way in hell I'm putting rods down on beside me. Now I will if I'm I might have two or three rods laying, and I got a PA-14. I might have two or three rods laying on the deck,
yeah.
dangling off. But it would take the kayak would have to flip for those to come off.
Right.
There ain't no way in hell I'm putting no damn the stuff on the side. I'm not doing it. I would lose it. I mean, no way, no way.
Now, have you? And I'm asking this because you said you learned how to cast. Have you essentially attempted javelin throwing one of your rods in your rod holders by casting? Because I've done that a few times where I flip back too far, hook my own rod. I've literally hooked my own rod and then sent my rod. Like I wish I'd gotten it on video, but at that time I didn't have a back cam. I literally took a jig and I was just trying to
Mm-hmm.
whip it out there. And on the backswing, it hooked the rod in my rod holder and it sent the rod. I had to catch the butt of the rod. It was just one of those peripheral vision, pure like dad instinct mode cat. I
Mm-hmm.
literally like went and caught the butt of the rod as it was like javelin by my head because I had casted it out of the rod holder.
Now, luckily at this point, I haven't done it, and the way I cast is highly unlikely. But every now and again, I'll put I'll put a rod or two in the little recessed rod holders on
Yep.
the back, and every now and again, this past tournament, I did catch one with my frog rod. But I cast my bait casters. I pretty much have all but one of the brake stops. I use Shimano, so I have all but one of the brake stops off, so I
Okay.
use a very loose spool. So I've got to the point where I'm always thumbing my line. And I used to have a different net, and sometimes I would keep the net back there and it was real tall, and I've caught it before. But as far as getting the rods behind me, no, I don't cast. I don't do any overhead casting. When I get on a bass boat, it takes me 15 or 20 minutes to
Yep.
to be able to cast right. But I haven't thrown anything in the water like that. And the one that slipped out of my hand, I don't even really know what happened. I had a jig on. I was kind of flip casting it, and I flip casted it from I cast right and real left. I flip
Yep.
cast it with my right hand. And I had to get it over the trolling motor, and it was hot and I was sweaty. And I think what happened is a jig wrapped around the tip, and so when I went to kind of flick my wrist and let it go, I wasn't holding on to the reel tight enough, and it just slipped out of my
Yep.
hand. I watched it. But I will tell you this: if you have a graph and you drop something, a rod or anything important, the first thing I did was I watched it for 2 seconds sink, and I was said I jump in, but there's a bunch of old pylons there, and I didn't want to impale myself with something on that, so I didn't jump in. I reached behind me to grab a crankbait rod, and when I came back round, I put a mark down real quick,
Yep.
and that was how I
Yep.
was able to find it, was by putting marking it and being able to get around that mark and find it. it's it's it's
I
just
dropped one.
you
I
know.
dropped one thinking out. So by the old town, they have the recess, like you said, the recess rod holders. And I was being lazy, and I didn't turn around, and I thought I was setting it in the rod holder, so I set it
No,
down and let go,
just dropped it.
and I just straight dropped it. Luckily, I was only in 5 feet of water with a
Yeah.
7 foot rod, and it sat in the mud, so I could grab the
Uh-huh.
tip, pull it back out. But literally on video, you just see me go
Yeah.
and just gone,
Boop.
and I'm like,
Gone.
and of course, I heard it splash, and I was like, oh. Luckily, I backed up and got it. But yeah, I did. I've done. The funny part is this year 4 tournaments. The first tournament, um, I found the rod I'd lost, and my teammate broke a rod.
Mm.
Second tournament, I broke a rod. Third tournament, he lost a rod. Fourth tournament, I broke a rod.
Damn,
So we literally have
y'all
a
in the whole
record.
hole.
Yeah, and it was all stupid stuff. Like the rod I broke on the fourth tournament, it was done. The tournament was over. I had pulled my kayak over to the side of the ramp because there was 2 boats that were waiting to launch, and I didn't want to even get involved with it. So I pulled it up into this reeds and basically to get it out of the way because I didn't know their level of backing, and I just wanted my kayak out of their way. And I had a swim jig on it, and the swim jig was just hanging off the end of the. I hadn't hooked it into an eye, and when I pushed my kayak back to go put it on the trailer, that swim jig caught in one of the reeds, and because I had that horizontal rod holder, it just bent that rod tip
Mm-hmm.
right over and it snapped it off like 2 eyes back. So it's not like it was just the tip where I could
Yeah.
replace
See,
it.
it
It's
sounds like to me
done.
you just need to get rid of that horizontal rod holder or get you a Hobie where you got horizontal rod chutes that you can put in.
Next year I've looked at Hobie or the Native Titan. I haven't decided which one
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with. The Native Titan's price is a little bit more attractive to me because of the 1,000 plus less dollars for the same size kayak roughly. But that's my goal. I'm gonna be doing a lot of trade shows with FX next year. I'm gonna be going and helping them at the booth, and that's kind of one of the best times to talk to kayak dealers because
Mm-hmm.
they already have their show deals, and I'm gonna try to see if I can get myself in because I love my old town. It's nothing against the old town. It's just I'm 5'11", 280 pounds, and I'm in a 10-foot kayak, and I
Mm.
need more space.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just and those old towns are not. They say they're 38 inches wide, but I don't know what the hell they're measuring because my 26-inch measuring board goes all the way across the whole top. So they must be measuring some other part that I can't see.
Yeah, I've only fished out of the PA-14, so I don't really get into the this kayak's better because I don't have that
Right.
experience. But if you have if you have a chance to grab getting some more stuff, the deck space on the Hobie is good for me. I have shit everywhere. If I'm taking lures off, I've got the little Hobie crate on my side rail. So
Yeah.
I drop all of my treble hook stuff there because I got tired of stepping on them and getting my feet and crushing them.
Yeah.
But
Done
if
that.
you like, I haven't cleaned my kayak out from this tournament this past weekend. I got bags of worms everywhere
It
and they
looks like
get
a
turned.
war zone out
Yeah,
there,
there's
man.
just shit. And it's I like all that deck space and I've got it. I'm good at where I get my board and all that stuff in there. It's just I like it when it rains. It's dry. There's no standing water and stuff in it. I like the boat. It does everything I need it to do. I don't have room for a trailer, but I hate those stupid ass Hobie wheels, and I'm scared to death to put the, what are the other wheels that you just put
Oh, the
into the
little sidekick thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
those wheels. I'm scared to death to put that on my boat. I don't want to deal with that. Like I don't even like drilling holes in my boat. The only holes I've drilled in my boat were to put the plug, the one plug for the trolling motor.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm very because something happened to this kayak. I don't.
It's
I
an
probably would.
investment.
It'd be a while before I got another one.
See,
It's
I got lucky with mine. The reason why I ended up with the old town was I was actually watching Rudd's video when he had that I think it was the autopilot. It was one of those ones, right? And he was talking about the weight capacity of it. And I was in a freaking Sun Dolphin
mm,
at the time. I wasn't any smaller. And he was talking about the weight capacity of an old town is $500. And I'm like, that's a $3,000 kayak that the weight is 500 pounds. And I'm in a $250 Walmart sit in. What's the weight? I found out I was 50 pounds over the weight
Yeah.
capacity of the kayak without the 8 rods and
Yeah.
6 3,700 boxes plus 2 bait binders and camera gear. So I was like, I need to upgrade. So then I ended up getting my kayak for $900 because West Marine screwed up. So they listed the paddle drive kayak at the paddle price.
Lucky.
And I bought on I bought it on a Dick's Sporting Goods credit card. Like I had the money and I'm like, I'm buying it because at that price, and it was literally March of 2020. So it was at the time where eventually, about 2 months later, you couldn't get it. If I could do it again, I would have bought 4 and I would have sold 2 for half price and profited. But I've had that kayak for 5 years. But like you said, I want the deck space. I want the wider kayak, and like the one of the reasons I like the Native is it's got, like you said, the holes issue. The Native built a bunch of the Titan X. They added like 4 or 5. There's 2 in the cockpit area. There's 1 up front. There's 1 in back. There's these little ports that you can literally screw through and you can replace them. They're not in the hull. They're actually drilled through ports for putting wiring. So that's something that, and the swivel seat is kind of interesting.
The swivel seat's cool. Yeah, the Native is built. They're here based out of the Charlotte area, and there's a lot of folks with Natives around here. They're a big boat. They're a sturdy boat. I know a lot of folks with them. They love them. Alex and I talk shit to each other about, because he's an Old Town guy.
Yeah.
But that's just us being assholes to each other. If you can try boat, go try
I'm going,
boats.
yeah.
Go try. And I'm not talking to you because obviously you've been doing this a while and seen a lot of boats. But for anybody new, go if you get an opportunity, because a lot of them will have demo days. If you've got a local place that sells kayak, they'll do demo days. Or if you're in a club, go out there and fish in a couple for half
You'd
a
be
day or something.
surprised. You'd be surprised if guys that are in a club, how willing they will be to let you just take their kayak out too. Like a lot of guys will be like, yeah, dude, take it out, go fish with it for a little bit. The thing is too, is like what he was saying is also seeing them in person. Like the Native Titan, the 10-foot looks bigger than 10. Like when you look at that kayak, it's a big boat. Like I have a 10.5-foot kayak, and then I looked at the Native 10.5, and I'm like, this is not even the same boat.
Yeah, natives look huge. Just
they
in general,
huge. Yeah.
The PA-14 is a big boat, and when you get the Native, whatever the newer one
the
is,
12.5 next to a 14 almost looks the same size.
It just looks, it looks like a big boat. Looks like a barge is what is the best way I can describe it. Yeah, just take some time, go ask somebody if you can use them, and figure out if you got a car top it. A 14 might not be the way to go, even though I know a bunch of people that have car top big ass kayaks. I load mine in the back of my pickup truck. I've got my system down. It's fine. Again, I referenced it earlier, putting the wheels on there to get it out of the ramp. I don't primitive launch mine. We got some areas that are beach launches that are fine because they're close, but I have to have some type of ramp. I'm not going to slide mine down a hill.
Nope.
Because it ain't coming back up. So you just make sure you know the bodies of water you're going to be fishing and how you got to launch and haul that damn thing too. That'd make a difference, because the last thing you want to do is have to, at the end of a tournament in 105-degree weather, come back up and have to start, hauling that thing 100 yards up a bank. And golly, that's the worst some days. We got some ramps around here that might as well be, climbing a damn grandfather mountain and just pulling that big ass thing up the hill. It's at the end of a summer tournament.
There is nothing more. It's and this is something that, and I'll probably going to end the live stream in a minute here, but I want to end on this thought, because I don't get a lot of guys that fish tournaments on here. It's 2 different worlds doing an 8-hour day of fun fishing and doing an 8-hour day of tournament fishing. The level of exhaustion after an 8-hour day of tournament fishing is an entirely different thing. Like when you hit that boat ramp at the end of a tournament, it is the most daunting task to pick that kayak apart and put it back in your truck and pack it out. It's like the most stressful, like annoying thing in the world to have to break all that down because you're just exhausted. Like you just want to
Mm-hmm.
get in your truck and take a nap after a tournament.
You know
That's
what's
why
funny?
I have a trailer because I don't have to break it down as bad. I can just grab it,
If
throw it on the
yeah,
trailer, and go.
if I'm in a townhome and that's a different story, but I don't have room for a trailer because if I
Gotcha.
did, I'd have a damn trailer for sure. The what's funny though is you talk about the end of the day of tournament fishing. I can still go play 18 holes of golf and golf for 3 hours, riding around in a
Really,
golf
I
cart,
can't.
sitting in the sun. And when I get home from playing golf for 3 hours in the summertime, I am more tired and worn out than being out there on the water, pedaling around and having to load and unload my kayak and do all that crap. I'm more tired after playing golf. Don't make no
Really?
sense. Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
well, because golf is
Yeah.
dumb and I don't have quite as much fun as I do. Hey, babe, I don't have quite as much fun doing that as I do fishing.
And that's,
And
I guess that's a
yeah,
good point. I think for me, it's like, I think part of it has to do with too is a lot of the ramps I'm going to, I'm leaving my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, so it's a 15-hour day for me, and I can't eat when I fish. That's the biggest detriment I have is I don't have the intestinal fortitude to eat something. Like I can't. My teammate will sit there and have like a charcuterie board practically on his fucking kayak. Like he'll bring like cheese, crackers, a sandwich, bag of
ugh,
chips. I basically can consume a Cliff Bar throughout the duration of a tournament, or I'm gonna end up having to go find a bush.
mm,
So like I'm also like I will eat, like I purposely will stop and eat. I bring two Cliff Bars. I eat one on the
mm-hmm.
way to the ramp, and then I have one when I hit that point where my stomach's growling so bad that it's coming through my wireless mic and it's going to ruin my audio. And then I pound
People
that down.
think you're
I drink
farting on the camera.
exactly. I've literally heard it. Like people don't realize it, but I've had to edit out my stomach growls in
Oh man, you got to
videos.
keep that in. That's the kind of shit. Oh, I
That's
meant to
true
say this
though.
earlier. Talking about we were talking about what people like to see on your YouTube videos that aren't catching fish. One of the greatest things I've said a few good things on our podcast, but one of the greatest is I'm gonna get a little bit mixed up here because I hadn't said it in a while. But if you want to go viral on YouTube, hook yourself, hook somebody else,
Yep.
fall into water, or shit your pants.
Yep.
Because folks want to see you catch fish and want to see you catch big fish, but they also want to see you in pain,
Yep. Yep.
emotional pain or physical pain. And if every trip you can have some type of pain involved in that video, that will drive people there because they
Yep.
want to see you in some type of pain.
It's true. You know what's funny is though I started editing different because of that. Because I used to do super elaborate montage fancy videos, and then I would cut out stuff that I thought would make me look stupid, like if I bird's nested a reel or if I hooked my rod in the
Oh
rod
yeah, see,
holder.
those are the
And
best.
and and then
Yeah.
I left one in because I thought it was funny, and I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna leave this in. I don't want to have to bother to cut this out. And then I realized like, and it sounds funny saying this in front of people who watch my videos as a regular basis, but you guys would probably rather see me fail at a tournament than win first.
Mm-hmm.
So like I put it in regardless. Like if I have a bad day, I've learned how to take a video and make something out of it. So like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times because sometimes I'll cut out like the weird stupid moment where I'm bitching at, like you said, self-deprecating. There'll be days where I'm like, I can't fuck. Why is there no fucking fish here? They're supposed, like I'm
I
bitching
suck.
the entire time,
Terrible.
yelling at
I'm
myself in the
selling my
camera.
shit at the ramp. I'm
Yep.
done. I'm gonna just
Yep.
push it out in the water, and whatever happens,
Yep.
happens. I'm done. Yeah,
Started leaving that stuff in, and all of a sudden people started watching my videos, and I'm like, oh, they
they
actually are
want to
here to
see
watch
pain.
me. They want to see the
Yeah.
video. They want to see. They want to. I treat it like the person's riding in the back of my kayak with me, and he's just hanging out with me fishing. Like
Well,
that's what I learned to do.
you want commenters to come in and tell you how stupid you are.
Yep.
So that way, that's going to generate some interaction for you to go back to them. And I say, kill them with kindness or gibberish is what I do. And
Yep.
then the other part of that is you get your followers who are going to come stick up for you, and then they're going to comment, and before you know it, you got a one comment chain that's got 20 comments on it because
Dude,
somebody's talking shit about you doing something stupid. And again, you
best
need
best
some of those
video I ever
trolls in
posted.
your videos. In your
Best video
videos,
I
those
ever
trolls
posted
get it.
was I think it was I was fishing a tournament, and this guy had a dock, and you'll appreciate this as an angler that does tournaments. This guy had a dock, and he had signs all over it. No
Hmm.
fishing, no fishing, no fishing, no fishing. private property, no fishing. So in Vermont, all water's public. If
Mm-hmm.
the dock is in the water, technically I can get out and sit on your dock and sunbathe because your dock is connected to the water. Therefore, it's public property. That's how Vermont works. It's not like the land under the dock is
Damn.
yours. The shoreline is where your property ends. So, like, if
Yeah,
somebody puts one
you
of those
get your
floating
ass shot
rafts
down
out,
here getting on
yeah,
somebody's dock, but
oh
yeah,
yeah,
as long as
guarantee it.
fishing it, you're
So,
good.
so we had a tournament angler that flipped the dock, and the guy got pissed, and he started buzzing everybody in like the old school jet skis, like the stand
Mm.
up, lift the thing, and he's just driving around me like harassing all the anglers. So I posted a video and I said ban jet skis. Let me tell you, dude, 30,000 views in 2 days, and like thousands of comments, and I got
Mhm.
everything from listen pedal boy or
Mhm.
plastic boat boy, and they didn't realize that the whole time I'm laughing my ass off because the more they're arguing on my chat, the more YouTube is sharing that video because it's getting engagement. And that's what they don't realize is
Yeah.
like I posted that to be funny, but then like literally ended up getting this huge influx of subscribers, and like you said, it was some people were like, yeah, you should ban kayaks, and then other people were like, no, screw the jet skis, and it just turned into this whole war that I had nothing to do. I didn't have to even
Yeah.
involve. I just watched the fire burn, and I ended up getting all this engagement from
Yeah. Alex is great. Alex has put a couple of videos of that. Did he do a jet ski? Yeah, he did a jet ski go one about a month ago, and it was some of the best. We were even laughing and
I
agreeing with
was.
some people on his comments. One guy said, "Look at this guy. He's out in a kayak, something something," and he picked on Alex about having a lisp.
That's the
And then
best.
Alex on our live stream, our Patreon live stream last week, wrote out, Paul is a fat bitch, but he misspelled bitch, and if you pronounce it the way that he spelled it, it was with a lisp.
Oh man, that is freaking awesome.
So yeah, it's funny. The trolls are fun, and it hurts some people's feelings. Like I've here recently been posting a lot of shorts, YouTube shorts, of me cooking, and I'm not trying to
Right.
teach anybody. It's just me cooking, and some people will say some, people will say dumb stuff, and I come back with them with the videos. I had one anyway. I had one today. I just sang "This Little Light of Mine" as a response video to his comment. I mean, stuff like that to me is fun. And the videos that Alex posts where he will try to do some rage baiting, that's when I get to go in there and really do stupid shit because I'm an idiot,
Yep.
and to the comments, and it's just fun to see them either try to argue back and have no idea what's going on, or they just don't say anything. But that's engagement, and a mean comment is worth 5 times as much as a good one.
Oh, his Bass Wizard stuff that he was posting for a while.
Those are
Oh my god.
people are
I
so
was
stupid.
I was watching the comments in that, and it was honestly, I didn't even care about the video. The comments were the entertainment from that video. Like
Yep.
it was just amazing watching the people yell at him about that. And it's like I actually ruined that for my wife because she's like, I want to see you do this, and I'm like, it's just played in reverse. And she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, it's just he's releasing the fish. And she
we
goes,
we
you
I
ruined that for me.
we both quit just commenting because it was just too much, and I mean that video went viral on Instagram. I want to say it's 50 to 60 million views on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yep.
I mean it went semi viral on YouTube and TikTok, but on Instagram it took off. I haven't looked at it in a while, in a few couple weeks, but it was up around 50, 60 million views on Instagram. And every now and again, because I'm attached to all the Bass and Brew stuff,
Right.
every now and again I'll get a notification of somebody responding. It's reversed. And I'm
Yep.
like, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah, that video. I saw that and I was like, "This is the best video." I'm like that, and then as a content creator, you look at that and you go, "It's genius," because you just created
And he's
so much
made a
content.
ton of those over the last couple years, and that
Yeah,
one for some reason just went. It was a really good one though, because you had to really look at it to kind of figure out what was going on. It was a good one, but he's made a ton of those, and that one just for some reason hit it right.
and people were pissed, and it was
It was
just,
awesome.
there was just so much banter back and forth. It was awesome. But yeah, we should probably, we're going on almost 2 hours now. Probably wrap this up unless you want to keep going. I
No,
always
I
give you the
got, like I
option.
said, man, I got Wednesday's a long day for me. I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go drive around and crush trash for about 13 hours. So I need to start wrapping it up, man. I sure do appreciate you having me on. You need to get Alex on here. He's probably a better guest than I am because he's terrible at fishing and he thinks he's better than he is, even though he doesn't think he's good. And you can really dive into how bad he is at fishing and give him a hard time about it. I'm kidding. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on. This is great. We love jumping on other podcasts and talking about what we do and how dumb we are. And it's a good time. So thank you for having me on. Definitely holler at him and get him on because he's a good
Will
time.
do.
He's a good time for sure.
If you guys haven't checked out Bass and Brews, check them out, guys. Like I said, it's the
Thank you.
first podcast I really got into. It's what I listened to when I was fishing until I started. I mean, honestly, I ended up just getting busy and not doing it. But I'm actually going to
Yeah,
start
it's
downloading that
it
stuff.
falls off. I used to I up until about 5 months ago, all I did driving around in my truck was listen to podcasts, and
Yep.
I've been doing some other stuff and hadn't been listening to as many. So it's great. We love every listener we get. If it's a one time or if you're a repeat offender, it's awesome. And we would do our podcast if nobody listened, we would
Yep.
still do it because we get opportunities we talked about at the beginning of the podcast to meet a bunch of people in the fishing industry and people that we've watched on YouTube and through
Yeah.
other social media. It's a good time. We enjoy it. And matter of fact, I wouldn't be sitting here right now with you
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Bass and Brews.
Yep, and that's literally why I continued it and stuck with it. Is you create these weird friendships where you start texting people that I would never have met you, I've
Hmm.
never talked to you. It's something that, and it's different. I can message you and say, "Hey, dude, I need a guest on Tuesday," and you're like, "Yeah, what time?" Like
Yeah.
it's a different world. So it's, yeah, but definitely, guys, check his podcast out. He posts a lot of videos. I mean, you're on all of it, right? TikTok,
Yeah, I
YouTube. You do
post,
YouTube
and
stuff,
right now it's mostly cooking stuff. I will post. Again, it's hard to post a lot of fishing content because I don't film anymore,
right?
but I'll do some stuff on that and do some rigging stuff. But yeah, I'm TikTok Jabberhammer or Paul Heels. Same thing with YouTube. Same thing with Facebook and Instagram. Paul Heels or Jabberhammer. And it's just a wide range of stuff. We got a new little puppy. I post him doing dumb shit and just who know? You never know what might pop up if you got me on your feed. You
I
have no
follow him,
idea.
and it's random.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's the silent like video, and then I have to click on it to see what the hell. Why is he pointing at, and what the hell is he pointing at the time? But like, if you guys see the title, you'll understand when you start looking at his videos.
hmm
But every
that's
once in a
right.
while, I'll just see him pointing at something. I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what he's doing. So, but yeah, I thank you for coming on. We'll have him back on again. Like I said, it's kind of a rotating door. Whoever I can get to come here on a Tuesday night, so it's usually. But sometimes I change the night. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming on, and I will not see you guys next Tuesday. I have to work, so we're gonna skip a week. And honestly, that's why I did the podcast on Tuesday, so I could say see you next Tuesday at the end of the podcast. But that's pretty much the stupid reason I chose Tuesdays. But yeah, I'm going to end the podcast right here, guys. And I want to thank you all. I am going to put a link to the Bass and Brews podcast down in the show notes if
Thank
you're
you.
watching this after the fact. Guys, go check it out, subscribe, rate it, do all the stuff that you're supposed to do for a podcast so that these guys get some more viewership. And we're going to jump out right now, guys.
See ya.